Welcome back to the Mythic Dungeon International, and it's almost as if NSYNC was here because bye keeps on happening. So, hello everybody. I'm Jack.
That was a good joke.
Today's my birthday. I say happy birthday, Jack, smiley face.
Happy birthday, Jack, smiley face.
I'm joined right now by Sloot, Nagura, and Tettles. And Sloot was the only one who didn't say happy birthday, so we're not going to focus on him at the moment. But Tettles, we've had a lot of buys coming in, and that starts affecting some of our schedules. So we take a look at our bracket. Let's start going over what's been happening thus far. After the initial buy with Buff 4 Nerf Rogue, it instigated a series of schedule conflicts going forward. So the next matchup that we are going to be having is going to be between Black Mamba, or sorry, not Black Mamba AAA. It's going to be, it is going to be Black Mamba AAA. My bad. We had just seen them previously square off against Pixel, and unfortunately our fourth series between AAA and Big Money Crab was not able to go on because Big Money Crab had schedule conflicts, so they are going to be moving down into the lower bracket right now. So we'll be having Black Mamba versus AAA. And then after that series, we will try to have Big Money Crab and Pixel, but if they're not available, then Pixel will move on into the lower quarters, and we will see them tomorrow. But right now, Shrine of the Storm is going to be our first match up going into this one. And Saddles, we got Tyrannical, Necrotic, and Skittish. This is very nasty.
Yeah, Tyrannical and Necrotic can actually be very dangerous to that dungeon. It's going to be interesting to watch and see what ends up happening with Black Mamba because we haven't seen AAA on the day. AAA had some questionable consistency issues last week, but it did feel like if they could nail down their consistency, then they could be better than Black Mamba. And whenever you're battling for BlizzCon points, it is very important for these two teams to be able to get as many points as possible.
Yes, and speaking of schedule conflicts, once again, Team D had one of their players who has to have a surgery, so they're not going to be able to participate this weekend, and it's questionable for the following. So with Black Mamba and AAA, there is a window here for them to capitalize on a path to BlizzCon, and they'll have to get it started right now with Shrine of the Storm.
Nothing but bad RNG for all these teams coming in here today, but starting up, Shrine of the Storm indeed. Skittish, not anything to worry about too much. This is really the Necrotic that we're going to have to keep an eye on these teams as Black Mamba and AAA getting ready to get out the gates here. Necrotic, very dangerous in his dungeons because there's a lot of low health mobs. It's actually one of the dangers we talk about with bolstering as well in this dungeon, but a lot of low health mobs, a lot of frequent hits, a lot of Necrotic stacks for these tanks.
Yeah, we actually see one of those snapping pulls come out of Black Mamba. We've seen this pull over and over, but we've seen teams fail to this very pull lots of times just because some of those mobs end up resetting the aggro and then they start evading and they hit random players while the tank is going away kiting. As you can see, Wong just going up the stairs, actually going down there. So one of the casts actually went off from the attendants. Usually you want to start kiting as soon as you run out of cooldowns as a tank, just so the casts don't actually go off because you ran out of interrupts, so those water blasts just go through and they just do such an insane amount of damage.
Right on cue. You hate to love to see it. The tank falls over. He just waited too long. He has his 46 Necrotic stacks when he started running away. That's just too much. He didn't have any defensive left. Spellfreck was on cooldown, so he just kind of bit off more than he could chew there as the battle. They did manage to clean up the pull, though, fortunately for them. Similar to what they had in their previous series, a lot of, their mainstay of the series was really a lot of sloppiness, but they did manage to recover, and that seems to just continue here today for Black Mamba as they down the pull, 11% trash, so one death on the board, which they use the battle rest for. And they've headed downstairs, done another snap pull in the corner, and are getting ready to spawn Acusir. AAA has already moved down as well. Oh, no, actually, they're still on the main platform. I thought they were on the platform before Acusir. They're still on the main platform beyond where the first Templar and all those initiates are, taking it a bit slower. No snapping for them either as the shield wall comes in for Woe right now, just to make sure he can help out with a lot of those Necrotic stacks building up.
I really like the snapping pull that Black Mamba is doing here, just because everything just stacks up so much faster. Now, unfortunately, because everything stacks up much faster, the tank also gets more Necrotic stacks, so that's something you do have to watch out for. Wang already going down once, and they did commit the battle rest to it as well. So they're out of battle rests at this point. Something that is kind of a questionable battle rest at this point, just because, you know, the entrance was right there, so he could have just released and run back, but because it's such a difficult pull to deal with, just not having the tank around, maybe they just wanted to go the safe way and use that rest, as they also just commit the Bloodlust for Aquasir, and you also see the army come out of the DK.
Aquasur or Madam here for the 95% on Black Mamba right now. Now, Bao going down on AAA, unfortunately, doesn't get the skip off properly. And that skip was also just a bit sketchy, too. Lai got ahead of Woe for a moment and then ended up proccing his undulating ties while they were running down. So just a bit of poor coordination on the side of AAA, but nothing too costly right now as they do manage to kill off, they managed to skip everything off, only one death, and then Woe running over manually here for the snap. Same snap that we saw Black Mamba do, but not nearly as many mobs this time as he immediately jumps off now that the Spiritualism isn't snapped and just provides himself with time to backpedal and kite. But looks like they didn't really snap everything. There's a couple of attendants still, unfortunately, on the side. And whoa, going down straight off the side of the cliff here. Lai will follow suit, and it looks like there's going to be a full team wipe. I don't think, no, certainly none of them have Shadow Meld available. Rogue might be able to vanish and get away to safety, but disastrous striking here for AAA, and that was a 10 out of 10 dive into the abyss there for Woe. So Black Mamba looking in good situation here as the 64% on Accusera with still that one death on the board, Nagura.
And it's one of those difficulties with snapping, right? I mean, if you get hit by anything whatsoever, but it was washaways, right? Then not only are you gonna die because you fall off the platform, but all of the mobs reset because there's no way of the mobs hitting them, following the tank off the cliff, and therefore they just reset to their initial position basically, and that's why the Resident Druid died right after, just because the mobs were aggroing on him and just finishing him off. So huge problem for AAA as Black Mamba are getting the intermission phase very soon on Aquasir. We've seen some teams struggle with the intermission phase, but mostly the teams are fine to deal with it. I also wanted to mention that Black Mamba had a very interesting strategy as Envy's actually pulled those droplets from the higher level because there's one spot, if you go really close there, almost falling off the edge, you can Moonfire or Sunfire one of those droplet packs, and they will slowly go into the boss, and you can just get a little bit of extra percentage. So well done by Black Mamba there.
Very well done indeed, as they are about to finish off their transition. Yaku's down to 24%. The last Aqualing will put him down to about 14 or so percent, and they'll just finish off that first revisit of phase 1. AAA still fighting here with the trash, getting ready to pull Accusera, who's already spawned. They can't sneak by him this time. Now, fortunately for them, after that wipe, they did have a second Rogue available, so they were able to use that second Shroud and get back down into action. AAA also committing their Bloodlust to this high Tyrannical health boss. Accusera is now at 90% HP for them as Black Mamba is about to enter their single target digit. Windspeaker Heldis, of course, present here on the side of Black Mamba. We've seen that be pretty popular now, kind of combining Heldis with this high Tyrannical mob just to get the benefit of that 25% haste rune that drops on the ground. Of course, it does strain the healer a bit more, but ultimately it is worth the net damage that you can output on the boss.
Yeah, definitely like the strategy with Heldis in there as well. You can see how evenly they finish off Heldis and Aquasir at the same time as well, so well done there. Now, thankfully, we do not have Bowstring anymore, something we had in Shrine for both the Eastern region and the Western region for the last 2 weeks. So thankfully, no more Bowstring. But yeah, Necrotic is something we've tanks had trouble with, and both Wong and Woe are not actually running Dwarf either. So we don't have any stone form to get rid of that Necrotic, so we'll have to watch out and see what the tanks are going to do later on. Just Necrotic, huge problem in this dungeon in general, because there's so many small mobs, like initiates, that hit you and just apply Necrotic, even though they don't have a lot of HP, but it's just going to cause so many problems because of that. But there we go, a pretty huge snapping pull by Black Mamba again, and it seems like they're dealing with it pretty well.
Really nice to see the Observer viewpoint on the Rogue. They're exactly what they do, running in and then grabbing everything with Tricks of the Trade, running back out just past the Void Emissary and tricksing everything over. So neat for them to see. Good view there by them as the Black Mamba hitting just about 40% in a moment here, 41% as they kill the most of the trash and are ready to run by that Void Emissary, likely committing their Shadow Meld to, I would assume, a pretty substantial skip, so they're probably going to combine some of this with the bridge as well, just to get either, well, I'm not sure if they're going to want to tank the Guardian Elemental. Some teams have started doing that, but certainly Runecarver Sorin is one that's going to be ignored, and not the case here for Black Mamba. They actually use their Shadow Meld and then use a Mass Stealth on top of that. Unfortunately, the DK goes down. Not sure if on purpose. There's no reason for them to be on purpose. He does not have a Shadow Meld available anymore and is not part of the Shroud, so they're going to have to wait for a res here from Envy's on the side, and we'll see just what they decide to do with that Guardian Elemental. We've seen a mixture of strategies in the past week. Some people, as I mentioned, have started pulling the Elemental and cleaving it down, and some people are still skipping it traditionally that we saw in the last season.
Yeah, the reason why some of those teams actually choose to pull those mini bosses is not because they're easy to deal with, but because the percentage gain from trash mobs has been changed in Shrine. So some of those mini bosses just have to be pulled to get the count that they need, so they can skip some other packs later on that are even nastier than those mini bosses. And we do have a tyrannical setting, so the mini bosses are not actually buffed. They do get affected by fortified, but not tyrannical. So some of those mini bosses can be dealt with, especially if you just cleave them on top of some of those trash packs. It's not as inefficient as just dealing with it all by its own, which just costs a lot of time. But those teams just decided to pull some of those bridge packs and just mini bosses on top of trash. But Black Mamba seems to be skipping this bridge elemental.
Yeah, certainly more traditional pull. Moon does have Vanish, so they let a rogue do it there because Wong did not have Shadow Meld available. He used it earlier to drop aggro with the Void Emissary at the top of the stairs. AAA here finishing off. Windspeaker held us that really did not get very efficient cleave on top of Agusir, who is already dead for them. A lot of damage coming in on the group. Lai's still fine on mana though, but just a lot of time lost here for Heldis, and it looks like they're trying to kind of drag it over to the door and make something happen with these initiates. Just get a bit of efficiency, if nothing else, on top of Heldis, as Black Mamba has already moved into the dangerous part of the pre-dual boss council trash here with a lot of the apprentices, and there's Iron Hulls and there's Tidecallers in there as well. Now, you can already see soon enough, at least, that Wong just wants nothing to do with this pack. He's already run pretty much across the map, dropped his Necrotic, and then charged back in. Wants absolutely no risk. They don't have a battle res available, and he already dropped once at the beginning of the dungeon with the Necrotic. So playing it safe here, and just a nice solid play by him now.
That pull was actually really impressive. I don't think I've ever seen anyone use the snapping spot. So I was wondering why Wong is jumping around the ledge over there, like right next to the water. But then it turns out there's a snapping spot all the way in the corner, and they were tricksing the whole area on top of him, just snapping everything on top, grouping everything up, and they dealt with it really well. I've never actually seen that snapping pull from any other team so far. So interesting to see that we see another Shrine strategy come out of the Eastern region, out of Black Mamba. Seems like the Eastern teams are just very good at figuring out new small little tricks in this Shrine, as they dealt with this area super fast. Now they're done with their apprentice as well, and it's just a boss left. Just insane speed on this trash here.
Yeah, no, really impressive. It's nice to see the Eastern teams. They're just kind of, I don't want to say the kings of, but they're certainly pushing innovation constantly in these dungeons. I mean, we just saw a bit there. We've seen it in the Waycrest Manor in previous weeks as well. So Black Mamba here getting started on Brother Ironhull and Galecaller Fae. High Tyrannical boss. They're not doing the trick that is starting to become somewhat popular for teams, where they jump up on the ledge on the side and basically nobody is worried in any way about any of the tornadoes going around. Just slightly the tank sometimes, only because you have to move out of the rune on the ground dropped by Brother Ironhull. But no problem here for them right now, so far at least. We'll see once the tornadoes start if it starts to be an issue. But a bit of disaster here on the side of AAA right now. A lot of buffed mobs, not bolstered, but you can see the damage increase for the Ironhull apprentices, the same one that Brother Ironhull gets for Black Mamba, running around and just trucking some of the members here. Hun had fallen, and he did, I'm not sure if he actually released, or no, that was one of their battle reses. They committed to one of their 2 battle reses there. So AAA just moving through this a bit sluggish compared to Black Mamba.
Yeah, and one thing to note about this boss here that Black Mamba is working on is that there's the zones that spawn that will get rid of the Slicing Blast debuff. Yes, you can see that it's up right now. You will actually get rid of all of your debuffs. That's why you saw Wong just stepping into the zone right there and get rid of his Necrotic stack. So there's just some very interesting mechanic that some tanks don't really know about. So just if there's a Necrotic weak, just remember that on this boss you can step into the zone, just clear your Necrotic, don't have to do any sort of taunting or running away shenanigans to get rid of it. So just Necrotic, not a big deal on this fight because of that mechanic.
Gotta be careful with those shenanigans right now. Galecaller Fae at 25% for Black Mamba. It seems that they're going for a more mechanical efficiency strat, mechanical safety strat rather than DPS efficiency. Usually we see both bosses cleave together a bit closer in order to maximize DPS output. But Galecaller Fae about to fall here for Black Mamba, which makes sense because they're also not taking advantage of the strategy up on the ledge to make everybody's life easier. So they just want to get rid of all these tornadoes spinning around the arena as fast as possible, because those hurt quite a bit, especially if you have any slicing wind debuffs, which likely you're going to have at some point in order to not spawn as many of them, quite frankly. AAA doing their skip across the bridge here for the Guardian Elemental as it finishes channeling. Woe immediately grabbing the patrol, which actually seemed to have been grabbed by accident, but he reacts and gets a Thunderclap in just to make sure he snaps aggro, and they're only fighting 2 of them right now, which leads me to believe it really wasn't planned to pull just yet. They probably want to do a bigger pull on top of that.
Yeah, so Envis is actually on the way to pull, I believe, an Enforcer patrol on top of Brother Ironhall, and that's why they actually finished off Gale Color Fae first. Now, Gale Color Fae is way more dangerous than Brother Ironhall, but some of those teams actually choose to cleave them down evenly instead of focusing Gale Color Fae just to be more efficient. But Black Mamba chose to finish off Gale Color Fae just so they can pull some more trash on top of it and be more efficient this way. So both strategies work, but Black Mamba choosing to pull the Enforcer on top. We'll see how big of an Enforcer pull they will do right after this, because Necrotic is going to make that pull even more dangerous than it already is.
Yeah, I mean, this is dangerous in general, too. Brother Ironhall actually hits quite hard when he's buffed with his Blessing of the Tides. So on top of an Enforcer, landing one of his deep smashes at the same time, it could be quite nasty. We saw the Spell Reflect committed there by Wong. Of course, you can't Spell Reflect the deep smash, but it will diminish 15% of that damage. Brother Ironhall here, finally, 13%. They've killed off the Enforcer, I believe. I can't see him there. I keep seeing the red nameplate, and I'm like, oh, there's the enemy. It's actually a Death Knight. So Brother Ironhall, 7% here. And Rogue, unfortunately, gets clipped by the frontal while he's buffed. Immediately procs Cheat Death. So just a bit silly proc of Cheat Death there. Not going to have that available for 6 minutes. Boss goes down. Everybody starts mounting up, and we'll have to keep an eye exactly on which Enforcers, if any. Well, I think they have to pull some, but they decide to pull Hun, unfortunately going down yet again here on the side of AAA. They have to commit the battle res, but D getting procced on the Cheat Death as well, and this is just a really nasty pull on their part, having a lot of trouble keeping that Enchanted Emissary out. Finally starts porting away. Woe getting low as well. Needs to reset those Necrotic stacks. He has a Sunder debuff from one of the Ironhall apprentices as well, and finally begins to kite, but oh, there we go. The Ring of Peace saves the day and should be able to reset there.
Yeah, so Black Mamba did decide to do one of those Shadow Melt skips to just go past all of the Enforcers, so they didn't actually deal with any of them. They do have their Bloodlust available, but at this point they might just save it for the last boss, which, again, something that actually, they might go for a one phase. They do have the setup for it. They have the DK. So we've been talking about this a lot for the last few cups. So the last boss in Shrine, you need an insane amount of damage basically to be able to only get one intermission phase. And the only team that really tried to get only one intermission phase was Abracadabra, and they were specifically running the DK because of that strategy. And we see the DK here this time around for Black Mamba as well. So maybe they want to pull off the one phase, the one intermission phase on the last boss, and are saving the Bloodlust all the way for that point. But for now, they have to deal with the bridge trash, which is pretty dangerous. But on a tyrannical setting, it should be alright as long as they deal with all of the frontals and all the interrupts properly, and the Necrotic, of course.
And the Necrotic. Yeah, just deal with everything properly and you'll win the dungeon, guys. You've learned Nagura's steps to success for M+ here. But yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I'm not sure if they're going to do it, but that is the key for the last boss, because what you do is you grab 2 of the 4 eel packs at the beginning of Volzith, the final boss of the dungeon, let the Unholy DK just get as much single target off of that AoE environment as he can, and then you grab the other 2 packs once you're done the transition, once you've killed off the trash. So when we finally get to that final boss, we will see if they decide to use that, but it's certainly a pretty tall order to try and one-phase that bosses, but I think we only saw one team do it successfully when we were still doing 17 dungeons for the 2 cups, both the first one of the West and the East. So certainly 18 is very hard to do, but it will be really cool to see if they could pull it off. But AAA here, with woes of their own right now, as they're about to fall, their Bloodlust is about to fall off, and they are doing seemingly a more efficient cleave strategy here, at least certainly not separating the 2 bosses' health bars as much as Black Mamba did. And they're also, Nagura, not opting for that safe strategy of going up on the ledge. Yeah,
interesting to see. I kind of want to know why some of the teams are not choosing to do this strategy, because for me personally, when I look at it, there's no real downside for doing it. There's only upsides, only the positive effect from the damage dealers not having to dodge it. But maybe it has something to do with the tank, because the tank actually needs to stay close enough to be able to have the melees be in melee range still, and still dodge the tornadoes, of course. So maybe it's too risky for the tanks. They don't feel comfortable tanking it too close while also dodging at the same time. Either way, Black Mamba did engage Lord Stormsong after dealing with those dwellers on top, not committing their Bloodlust for this boss yet, and we'll see who gets the mind control. Hopefully it's the rogues with their cloaks, so they just completely get rid of the mechanic.
I'm pretty sure you can pre-AMS it too, as we just saw there, coming in from the DK. He pops his AMS, his anti-magic shell. That is I'm actually not sure for Unholy. I don't know. I think it's a 1-minute cooldown for them as well. Nonetheless, it's a fairly frequent cooldown for Unholy. Just making sure to pre-pop that before the mind control comes in, before these first void balls go around, just so you have enough of them to collect later on and break out immediately. Not only break out immediately out of your mind control, but also clear the arena for the players right now, as a bit of rip mind damage goes in on the Unholy DK, easily healed up by Envies. 60% on the boss right now, 87% trash, just the amount of trash that they need in order to complete the 100% in the final room, as AAA has downed Geocaller Faye now and is just chewing through Brother Ironhall. Not sure if they, I don't see their, oh no, there's the Enforcer, so they're doing the same strategy.
Look at Envy's damage. I'm just like staring at the damage meters right now for Black Mamba as he's doing almost 30k single target DPS to Lord Stormstorm, doing more damage than one of their rogues. Actually just straight up out DPSing the rogue there. So insane damage capabilities coming out of Envy's here, as you can see him switch in and out of cat form, just cat weaving, making sure the dots, Sunfire, Moonfire up at the same time as also just having all the bleeds up, doing insane amounts of single target damage. This is also one of those bosses where there's not a lot of healing required, so he definitely enabled more to be able to switch in and out. Outside of this ripped mind that needs to be dispelled and healed away, really not that much going on, especially if you make sure that you immune the mind benders. Unfortunately, one of the mind benders going on Envies right now, so that's the only reason why the rogue beat him in damage. That mind bender.
Oh, absolutely. Of course. He just wanted to let them have a chance.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's going to be interesting to see. So what are his trinkets right now? He's wearing Aquapotent Nautilus, which I believe is the frontal on use. Yeah, it is indeed. And he's wearing Leviathan's Lure, so he's going pretty much fully offensive, and he's wearing the Ashara Staff as well, which is not proc just yet. So it looks like the story's starting to unfold in we're trying to one-phase the final boss on an 18. Lord Stormsong, the second last boss, about to fall here for Black Mamba, as they will, Wong taking just a bit of a hit there, but they get ready to get into this pool of doom right now, past the Jellyfish, which of course nobody will ever get stunned by, as AAA has also finished off the second boss, has rushed over to the bridge. Very similar strategy in terms of pathing coming out of AAA right now that we saw Black Mamba do. They are about to down the Tentacle pack, and then we'll get ready for the one remaining depth bringer pack there. But interested to see what Black Mamba does here. I think it would be really cool to see a one phase on this last boss.
Yeah, I'm just very impressed by Black Mamba so far in this dungeon, because we've talked about their inconsistency and not being able to execute their strategies properly, and they arguably, you know, they have a problem today just because in theory they would have a lot more time before they would have to play this match, but because of the bye and teams not showing up, they have to play this match a lot earlier than they were supposed to, and therefore they probably didn't have enough time, didn't have a lot of time to think about this match in particular, because they were just playing against another team, just having this other series. So having a back-to-back series when you don't really know about it beforehand might actually cause you to make more mistakes. But Black Mamba actually showing up for this shrine, doing such a good job so far, and you can see them engaging Volstic with the double eel packs, as Salute mentioned earlier, just to get that extra percentage and get the extra damage from the DK, and still holding on to the Bloodlust. I really want to see the one phase.
Yeah, we'll have to see if they're able to pull it off. I mean, the boss actually despawns here. I think they went over one of the... Yeah. There are a couple of areas on the floor that are a bit... scary, so to speak, in terms of just to evade issues, and it seems that they clipped one of them on the ground, although they're usually closer to the water where they are now, so I'm surprised they had any issue there. But looks like they're trying to salvage the situation by grabbing the second eel pack, and they're leaving one eel pack down there too. I guess they're just cleaning this down while the boss respawns, but I think unfortunately any hopes they might have had of one phasing the boss without the support of the eels feeding into single target damage for the Unholy DK is gone. Now just kind of having a look at Envy's gear, he's definitely built for as much damage as possible. He's got double damage dealer trinket, he's running 3 traits of undulating tides, he has a high noon trait on as well, so I mean that was their goal all along. But Volzith, as we saw at least on the 17s, has to get to like in the mid 70s range to even have a chance for you to one phase it. I don't know if they're going to be able to pull that off in an 18 hero.
Yeah, it's probably not going to work anymore for them, unfortunately, just because the rogues don't have their cooldowns available anymore either for this first push here. Now, of course, the biggest damage they're going to do to the boss is after the intermission phase with the Bloodlust and everything like that, but you still need to do a decent amount of damage before you get into the mission to be able to one-phase it, and we only got to 85%, so definitely a very highly doubt that they're going to have enough damage unless, you know, we get double 5 buffs on the rogues, if they're really skillful.
I mean, you know, I love nothing more in the world than to disagree with you, but I just can't do that in this situation. I don't think they're going to do it. Envy's, though, absolutely pumping damage downstairs right now, just crushing that ad. We mentioned how offensively built he is at the moment, so it was probably part of the plan. At least all the Scooby-Doo clues are coming together that would indicate that they were trying to one-phase this boss. I just don't think it'll work now because of that reset, and the eels that they needed as a battery, essentially, for the Unholy DK are gone now. You can see them running over now and grabbing the other eel pack to try and replicate that situation to a certain extent, but we'll have to see. Lord Stormsong here, 23% for AAA as they try to claw back into action, but there's 6 deaths difference between the team, not to mention several minutes behind, and it looks like the team's just settling for combining the eels with the trash, the 3 denizens that rest in front of Volzith. So I think they've just kind of come to terms at this point with the fact that they're going to get one more transition phase.
Yeah, probably. There's one thing you actually got to watch out for now. Skittish is an affix that usually doesn't really do much for an MDI environment. There we go. I believe it just got aggroed. That's actually a big problem for those kind of pulls for the Rasta Druid, just because you generate so much aggro from healing aggro and damage because of the damage buff that you get on this boss. And then Skittish, you know, just affecting it even more. You just gotta watch out so much, and I think that's exactly what happened to Envis right there as he got aggro and just went down. Now they definitely won't have enough damage to finish off this boss, just because Envis does not have the buff on him anymore, so he does not do increased damage anymore.
That's just what happens if you don't wait for 3 Sunders from the tank, as everybody around the world is learning right now. But Volzith, 71%, 70%. Of course, they have committed their bloodlust to this final burn on the boss. 3 deaths on the board. They did have the battle res, fortunately, from the Unholy DK, who I just mentioned, and went down as I said that. I think from one of the tentacles he got caught on the side. So once again, fortunately for them, they have a double battle res comp. Envy's going down again. That is going to be a wipe. I don't think they're going to be able to survive. I mean, as long as the tank survives, he is wearing Urchin and Edict on top of it, so he's completely fully defensive build with any kind of sustain you can get on a protware that already doesn't have a lot of throughput in terms of self-healing, almost virtually none. But Wong goes down, and they're not going to be able to pull this off. It looks like the rest of the team is trying to get away, but they actually get transitioned. So this is going to waste even more time for them. They have to sit in this transition and wait to die. Those ads cast so slowly, and they're not going to one-shot you either. So Volz is just sitting there channeling on the group, and AAA is creeping up from behind. Their 6 death difference is now a 1 death difference. It's going to be actually a 1 death difference in favor of them once the 2 rogues go down. And Gura, I think they might actually snag this game from them.
There's definitely a chance. I mean, AAA does have their bloodlust available to them. Now Black Mamba, there's no way they can do the 1 phase anymore, just because, you know, they're out of bloodlust. So even if they can get back to the boss, there's no way of them even 1 phasing it at all. And AAA, they're fighting the boss at this point. The rest of the trash, if they need the 10%, they can just pull on top of the boss with the eel packs, and they still have to finish the middle pack after the intermission. But I think it's going to be AAA winning this game here very unexpectedly.
I think so too. I mean, there's no way they can lose this unless they... There is literally no way that they can lose this unless they also have a full team wipe. But, I mean, Black Mamba just showed us that anything is possible indeed at the end of the boss here as Wong tries to heroic leap back into action. They're very desperately trying to get back to this boss and pull it right away. No trash left anywhere. Nothing standing between them and pulling the boss outside of the very slow-swimming rogues and DK. DK, unfortunately, not exactly the pinnacle of mobility, but is trying to get back in time. AAA is already dealt with their transition phase, has moved over to the trash. Now, the only maybe slight saving grace is the fact that there's a bit of trash that AAA has to deal with, but there's an extra 5 seconds as well.
Yeah, so Black Mamba, they did engage the boss at this point. They don't have any more trash that they have to deal with. It's really only the boss between them and finishing this dungeon, but they have to play 2 transitions probably, just because they don't have the bloodlust available to them. I doubt they can do that much damage to be able to finish it off without bloodlust, especially because the DK does not have army available to him anymore, so lots of cooldowns just not there for them. Well, AAA finished off the middle pack. They still have to do a couple of eel packs, but they can just pull it on top of the boss, right? They have the bloodlust available. They can even play it safe and just finish the eels and then go to the boss as well.
I don't know how safe they think they can play it, to be fair. So they do actually commit to pulling the eels on top of the boss with Bloodlust. There's going to be a lot of damage coming in on Will right now. It's not only the necrotics, but it's also the shadow damage going up. So he's already committed his shield wall. That's down. He doesn't have access to Last Stand or Spell Reflect. Iron Bark's already gone too. A lot of damage coming in on Will right now as he tries to get away. 33 stacks of necrotic and is not able to reset as he refreshes to 34. Volzith still at only 50% energy. There's just no way. Battle Res comes up immediately, but Lai immediately gets smacked after that because of his buff and the threat and the healing aggro. They don't have a res for him, and I don't think he got the res off either on the tank. He got hit before it, but Envy's going down here for Black Mamba as well, and we are just full Fiesta mode on this last boss as Volzith. There's just no way they're going to be able to finish the boss on either side, so double full team wipe. All resources have been expended for both teams. No Bloodlust. Both teams are going to have to reset here and come back in, but I'm not sure if this is a good call from Black Mamba. They look like they're trying to do this without the healer, and I think this is going to lose them the game if they don't commit to wiping and just starting over.
I think so as well. They have to wipe now. They probably think this is the last chance of them winning to just try and continue without the healer, but they're just going to be so much slower, and they're not going to make it because of Necrotic. Necrotic is just causing so many issues, and now it's going to take them even longer to wipe, just because Wong, look at his HP, he's too low, he won't be able to tank the in the demission phase at all, so they're inevitably just going to wipe later on. They won't have a battle rest available. It's going to take too long for it to come back up, so it might just be AAA still taking this game, even though they just did have a full team wipe. They also have a battle rest available on AAA's side, so if something goes down, and if someone goes down and the rest of it doesn't die immediately afterwards, just like it now happened, then they can have the battle rest get used and get someone back up. But yeah, Black Mamba, they're in the intermission phase. There's no way of them getting the healer back up, so they will probably get maybe even, like, they could definitely get one more intermission phase right after this one. So I don't see how they can do the boss without the healer at all.
No, I mean, neither do I, and they're trying. They finished transition. You can survive the transition as a tank, no problem, because you just run around. The ad's very slow. You wait for the DPS to kill their phase, then they join the tank in his phase, and they kill the mob for you. But that's exactly what they're doing right now. You can see the images killing that very ghastly abomination there. They're about to finish it off. But, I mean, Wong is about to re-engage the boss, who, by the way, doesn't exactly melee for nothing. Hits a fair bit hard. Wong's at 19%. His Urchin's not doing any work because he wasn't getting fed any damage from the healing. All he can do is blanket himself with Ignore Pain. And, I mean, the rest is just going to be, hopefully, they manage to somehow kill the boss. But they're going to have to do at least one more transition, whereas AAA is already back in action. They're about to pull their last percentage trash of Eel's worth on top of the boss. And then they're going to go to transition as well.
And, I mean, for Black Mamba, the boss is already in 50% energy. You can see the bar below the HP bar at the bottom here for Volzith. As soon as the boss reaches 100, he will just start the intermission again. I'm not really sure what Black Mamba... Oh, they're waiting for the battle rest.
Yeah.
They're just waiting for the battle rest to come back up for Envies. But, I mean, I feel like it would have been bigger time saved if they would have just, had a full team up and come back, because they still need to wait quite a bit. Can't see the exact timer on the battle rest to come back up, but they're definitely waiting for it to, and there's nothing else they can do either, right? They already have the 100% trash. There's nothing they can do other than sit around.
Yeah, I mean, exactly, because there's no way Wong was surviving a full phase. And now they're going to start the boss at basically a half of a phase 1 because of that 50 energy, because the ad's absorbed while they were downstairs in transition. AAA has started their second round of phase 1. They too definitely will have one more transition. Finally, the battle rest comes up on Envies, and they start back here up again on Black Mamba. Black Mamba now has actually the favor in terms of deaths, though. They have an extra 10 seconds to deal with, so this match is shockingly close.
Yeah, especially, it was talking about Black Mamba and how clean they were playing the Shrine, and how they finally, got their nerves back together, and they got a hat in the game, and they're finally playing well, and that's what we wanted to see from Black Mamba. And then they have those huge problems on this last boss, unfortunately. I mean, a big deal was also the reset, which is something, it's unfortunate. Sometimes it does happen with the elevated positions here on this platform. So maybe that just, threw them off their game, the fact that the boss reset, and they realized they're they're not going to be able to one-face it anymore. Maybe they just got to their head and they didn't play properly anymore. Either way, if they lose this game, it's going to be a huge throw on their side because they were so far ahead. And now AAA is on their heels and they might just be able to finish this off. As you can see the boss HP, 40% on both sides. One more death on Black Mamba, unfortunately.
And they don't have a battle res because
Yeah.
they waited Win Eternity to get him up
Lai died.
earlier. And Lai died, Will goes down. Another full team wipe coming up for AAA. And we are just not going to be finishing this match here today, folks, as Black Mamba is trying to get through the rest of their phase. Black Mamba technically can still pull this off. I mean, they have one DPS down. I'm not sure if the DPS downstairs are going to be able to survive because now they're going to be missing an interrupt for their transition, and they definitely will have at least one more transition phase with their Demon Hunter, their Death Knight missing. They're not going to be able to DPS this boss down before another transition phase. So this is rough, and I'm not really sure what AAA is doing. They're just kind of dancing around the boss right now. Finally, they interrupted and commit to the fact that well, they're going to wipe again.
They might be able to actually finish off this boss. As you can see, it's actually dropping quite fast, and both of the rogues do have their adrenaline rush ready, so maybe there's a way they can finish it off. You can see the boss is just now reaching 50%, but if not, like if they do get another intermission phase and the rogue just proccing his cheat death, then they will have to deal with the denizens that need to be interrupted with only 2 rogues, which in theory should be doable just because they have defenses available, but they just used both of their cloaks. At least one cloak got used, so they won't have that, and it's going to start casting. Envy's died!
Envy's dies at the last second. They needed that damage as the boss is casting right now, and he's about to enter the transition phase.
No.
So we're in the transition phase yet again. The rogues can survive. The cast's going off. Well, I mean, the cast going off would have been a problem for the healer anyways. He would have died. Now, if Wong stays alive in his phase, with the rogues being able to do the amount of damage, well, they need to do to at least kill one of the ads slowly at a time, they might be able to pull this off as AAA rearing up for their 49th attempt on this boss, trying to down it here. And, I mean, they could still technically catch up right now. I mean, it's a tall order for them, but the rogues are just getting so much damage down in that phase. Wong able to just kite this pretty much indefinitely as long as he doesn't take any of those tentacles to the face. And the rogues, let me see, the rogues looks like they're dealing with their second ad right now. You can see their images go across. So they're dealing with their second denizen while we have Wong just kiting her in circles endlessly here.
I mean, okay, so as long as they don't miss any sort of interrupts anymore, which I do believe 2 interrupts are fine, right? 2 melee interrupts are fine to interrupt 1 denizen, so they should be able to just finish off the boss, right? Because once they are done with the denizens, they just finish off the tank one that you can see him kiting around, and then the boss only has 3% HP, so it's almost impossible for them to wipe within those 3%, right? They even have bloodlust.
You say that.
They even have bloodlust, so 3%, right? They can even just pop the riposte and just finish it off, so it should be Black Mamba.
That's a big should Nagura right now. They're still waiting on finally the denizen dies, and Moon, both rogues get into action on top of the boss. That
Use
does
the bloodlust.
Indeed. I'm actually super curious. Maybe we can get those stats later, but I'm super curious to see what the boss pull time was for Black Mamba there, because that was still
combat timer.
Yeah, the combat timer, because that came off of like 3-manning at the end, waiting for the battle res. I'm almost speechless, but not quite.
Oh, you're not speechless at all. What?
That was
That was a game. That was a game indeed.
That was a game.
And as Black Mamba had an incredibly good run before they entered that final boss room, they did just barely eke it out thanks to AAA just getting a flat tire, basically, Tettles.
I don't know what to say about that.
That was a car reference.
That was a very good car reference.
Thank you.
Black Mamba, like you said, they had really good positioning towards the very beginning of the dungeon. They were doing some of their nice snap spots off the back of a AAA mistake where their tank ended up getting knocked off the edge. They had a full wipe. So it looked like Black Mamba coming into the last room was going to end up doing the dungeon in about somewhere in the range of like 24 minutes. However, there were some issues towards the very end. Yeah. So like they had a really good run going in this Lord Storm song, and unfortunately, whenever I was setting up these highlights, I was not there for all of the wipes that we could talk about. However, we are going to be seeing this one boss reset because the Abyssal Eel. So sometimes they'll like patrol back and forth, and if they actually end up getting stuck underneath the water, they can like reset. However, they actually reset the boss there, so that was very bad for Black Mamba. And then off the back of just like a few more wipes, just because the healer is in such a very bad spot with that promises of power buff, if he gets hit by any incidental damage coming from a cast, a tentacle, the ground effect that silences you too also ticks for a little bit of incidental damage. Any of the ads hitting the boss or anything. Yeah, aggro, he could pull aggro.
Especially in a skittish environment.
Sneezing.
Basically.
Looking away from his monitor and getting hit by a tentacle. Like, there's a multitude of reasons that your healer could die, and I think we saw many of them coming in out of both teams. So that was
They were most certainly on to display, and after this break, we're going to be going into a much safer dungeon. It'll be Waycrest Manor, full of lovely joy. So we'll be taking a quick break onto this one. Game 2 coming up soon. After an incredibly interesting game between Black Mamba and AAA, to put it lightly, we're going to be moving on into Waycrest Manor and Tyrannical teaming Sanguine. I can't imagine that the beginning of the dungeon is going to be anywhere near as safe on this one, Sloot.
I mean, this will also be a dungeon. And it's going to be, between the affixes present from Shrine of the Storm to Waycrest, teaming Sanguine, 5, the only dungeon in BFA that has 5 bosses instead of 4, and we're in a tyrannical environment on it too. Void Emissary on top of it.
Can you make that sound for me again?
I mean, we've had a pretty good history thus far of Waycrest Manor being a pretty challenging dungeon. I mean, come on, Nagara, I'm sure they're happy that it's not bursting in necrotic, at least.
I mean, that's true, but
it could be like level 12 in terms of
that's
difficulty.
true. I mean, Sanguine still makes this whole dungeon just such an annoyance, though. I mean, at the start of BFA, when you were thinking about Sanguine as an affix that doesn't really do much, as soon as you stepped into Waycrest Manor, you're like, wait a second.
Wait a minute.
Sanguine is not a nice affix to have, just because the corridors are so that, yeah.
Yep, it's even worse.
Imagine needing to play the game, Jack.
I mean, I'm imagining right now we get to watch them firsthand under that one, right?
Are there any dragons?
I mean, imagine them. And you'll find them yourself. It'll be great. And Black Mamba, let's talk about this one, Tettles. They had a good run at the start of the Shrine of the Storm, looked decently impressive, but after that, they just couldn't get any momentum going for that final boss.
Yeah, so for Waycrest Manor, we're going to be looking to see the courtyard area, and we're also going to be looking to see how they deal with the guards and captains' pulls as the pivotal points of this dungeon.
Let's get into it then.
I mean, the pivotal point in this dungeon is going to be every single trash pack they kill, because Sanguine is going to be dropping in a very tight enclosed space. And if any of these mobs start healing for a substantial amount, that Sanguine, with how dangerous all of the trash is, especially those guards and captains, it's going to be pretty rough in Nagara.
Yeah, most definitely. And already from the get-go, I mean, Waycrest Manor is one of those dungeons where almost all of the teams want to pull trash on top of bosses, right? Just because it makes it so much more efficient. But you can't really do that when you have Sanguine. It's going to be super difficult for those teams to pull anything on top of bosses, just because there's the risk of the teams healing the boss, and that's something you really don't want to do.
No, healing the bosses, I've been taught, is not a good thing in this game. But
Glad you agree with me.
I do, and a lot of the aggressive pulls that we saw coming in from some of the West teams were actually, let's just say, Lord and Lady Waycrest. It was pulling all of the witches and those elementals on top of that. But here we go, as Black Mamba actually does not engage. Neither of the teams engage with that front Void Emissary plus the 7 mobs. They just rushed right onto the balcony of the Triads, and they actually combine the Soul Essences with that. Both of the teams. I don't think we saw this from the East.
No, we actually haven't seen this at all. So interesting strategy coming out from the West. So interesting to see that both of those teams are doing this strategy, pulling those essences on top. Now, this trash is pretty dangerous to deal with just because of the cast coming out, but outside of that, you don't have a lot of tank damage except from the patrol, which is only 2 mobs. So that's why this is not the biggest deal. You also got caster, actually, Runeweaver, which unfortunately starts a cast inside the Sanguini, so heals to full HP for the Runeweaver. Black Mamba dealing with this pack a lot better, not getting the heal off on the Runeweaver, which is very difficult to move because it can't actually be knocked by Ring of Peace or Typhoon.
I see you speak the language of the Sanguini Panini. Excellent, I've taught you well. Black Mamba getting started here on the Sister Triad right now. I don't think they'll be wanting to pull any trash on top of this, because 2 of them are indeed stationary while they're casting on the side if they're not empowered by the Iris. AAA having to still chew through this Runeweaver that went from 20, I think, %, something like that, all the way to full. And it is a very elite or lieutenant style mob, if you will. A lot of health, immune to most forms of crowd forms of crowd control, so lost a fair bit of time there as they finally engage with the Sister Triad. Triad and commit their Bloodlust to it as well.
Yeah, so this boss is one of the most difficult bosses in general throughout all of the dungeons, especially in a tyrannical setting, just because there is so much AoE going on. You can see Envis drop very low, and all of those sisters do have a passive aura that gets enabled once they do have the Ares. So Sister Briar, especially difficult just because of the Nettles debuff, which will be applied to a random member that is not a tank. It will drop you very low because of the initial damage. You can see it right now go out to the DK, but he did use all of his defensive, so the initial damage was not too bad. So the grievous kind of effect that gets applied from the Nettles was healable immediately by Envy. So well done by them. They also committed the Bloodlust, so they should be fine to also get rid of the kind of hard enrage that the boss has once they reach 100% energy.
Yeah, they do cast a ritual then that damages you for an immense amount of damage. You can't technically survive it, but I mean, most non-tanks can unless they have really heavy cooldowns. And, you know, it was really fortunate that the Jagged Titles actually hit the Unholy DK there in Nagura, because they're also able to just Death Strike and heal themselves for a substantial amount. So that's definitely the target you want being hit on the side of Black Mamba by those Jagged Titles. AAA here working on their second round of phases as they're about to down Sister Selena here and then move over to Sister Milady, something that Black Mamba, the one that Black Mamba rather is working on right now. And really a lot of the danger that is going to come from, well, the dungeon is going to start in the next hallway, especially with the Sanguine, because of all those guards and captains.
Yeah, most definitely. Sanguine is just such a big problem in this dungeon in general, because almost everything is inside the building, and all those buildings, they have those very small corridors that one Sanguine pool basically makes up the whole corridor. So the only way to get rid of it completely is to make sure that the tank kites it 100% properly, but it's super hard to do, especially if you have those mobs that just jump around, or if you have to start kiting. Later on, you're gonna have the Gorgers, which jump to a ranged target, and then you just have Sanguine pools all over the place. So what we usually see from teams is that once they clear this trash here that Black Mamba is working on, they just try to pull most of the trash outside into this courtyard area where Goliath is, just because there's more space than inside those corridors.
Yeah, indeed, and we have the Emissary of Tides swimming in the Sanguine. Fortunately, Emissaries are not affected by pretty much any of the affixes dropped by the mobs, similar how we saw Reaping in the previous season. Just not a thing for them, as Black Mamba, both teams have kited back into the room here for the Sister Triad. Just a lot more space to kite, but they have to be careful because there's some trash on the sides that they did not pull, at least on the side of Black Mamba. Either side was not pulled for them, so the last thing they want is to grab that, but unfortunately they let the Rune Weaver and the other sister sit in those warding candles, which decreased damage taken by 50% for a bit. So fair bit of damage lost there as AAA pulls more trash into the room. Now AAA has more room to play with here just because they have cleared some of the sides of trash, so they don't run the same risk of accidentally killing something. And as far as space efficiency really goes with Sanguine, I mean, Sanguine has a 1-second arming time as soon as a mob dies, so you can kind of, in some ways, if you play it very well, like bolstering and kill everything at the exact same time, you'll actually be able to just drop one very concentrated area of Sanguine, as opposed to, you know, as you mentioned, Nagura slowly backpedaling and dropping pools all over the place.
Yeah, that's definitely a strategy that the teams can also go with. It's also more dangerous though, because, for example, the Rune Weaver does have a lot more HP than all the other mobs. So if you wait and just finish off the Rune Weaver first to make sure everything dies at the same time, it's more dangerous, but more efficient. So that's definitely something that those teams can do as well. Black Mamba, they are actually finishing off this Void-Touched Emissary, which is something we've seen the Western region just completely skip. They will just jump past this Emissary and just Shadow Melt on the other side of the room, just so they don't have to deal with it at all. But Black Mamba actually choosing to finishing it off and not having that many problems with it either. Now they're dealing with the Soul Charmer and some more of those guards that do an insane amount of tank damage, and that's why you can see single target stuns come out of the rogues on top of these guards, just so to give Wong some breathing room.
Yeah, they have to be careful too, because there is the frontal shadow cleave that a couple of the melees got hit by there, as Wong continues to backpedal along the wall to make sure that as these mobs are dying, the Sanguine is dropping and not affecting the Soul Charmer, that was actually very close. They killed it off right before, as I mentioned, the arming time went up. Woe taking a bit of damage here, finally gets the Dispel from Lai, the Decurse rather, as Hun has been clipped by the Void Emissary and dips quite low, but stable now as they've taken most of this trash upstairs. This is a really dangerous pull here for AAA. There's a lot of tank damage going in that pack, and they have to be careful to not be in front of any of those guards. As I mentioned, they have the cleave. Not much space to kite here as the Ring of Peace finally goes down to bump a couple of those guards out of the Sanguine that is kind of hiding under the carpet there. So AAA, they really need to be careful where they kill this, because they're going to need to head down the stairs eventually, and their Void Emissary is not killed and pulled downstairs.
And Black Mamba actually also did a very dangerous pull, as they pulled a lot of those Thorn Shapers and Thorn Guards from the inner courtyard inside the house, which is the exact opposite as I said earlier, which people usually pull everything outside into the courtyard because there's more space, and Black Mamba chooses to pull mobs from the courtyard inside the house, which is interesting to see. But it was a pretty huge pull, so they dealt with it quite well just because they had more line of sight available to them. So I kind of like it because the Thorn Shapers constantly cast those debuffs on random players, and you are actually able to line of sight the cast. So if you run out of interrupts, you can just have the healer, if he's getting targeted, go around the corner, and they will not get to finish the cast on top of them.
No fun for Hun here, as unfortunately he falls at the end of that Captain Guard pack for AAA. They have to commit their, they commit their res to it. They do hang on to their Bloodlust, as the rest of the team did jump downstairs and Shadow Meld around the corner in order to get away and drop aggro with the Void Emissary that they had pulled prior. So in a way, they did kind of do what the West did. They did skip it, but they did the trash rather than the West, who skipped that, but also skipped most of the trash in there. They just don't want nothing to do, as much as they can, at least nothing to do with all of these guards and captains rolling around. The captains just have so much health, and if you miss the interrupt on their shield, they get a 75% damage reduction shield for like 15 seconds or something. They take forever to die. AAA finally heading off into the courtyard here, as Black Mamba has actually started on Soulbound Goliath with Matron Brindle on top of it. Once again, they're going to need to be very careful where Matron Brindle dies. That's why you see the kiting already happening with Soulbound Goliath, so well done by them there as they finish it off. But unfortunately, they kite it right into one of the fire pits that's about to spawn on the ground, and they do a reset on the boss, which, not the end of the world. It was probably about time that they did one anyway, so it looks like Envy's was ready for that.
Yeah, so they actually dealt with this whole area pretty well on Black Mamba's side. They did pull the mini boss with has a lot of those small minions around it that don't have a lot of HP, but you saw the utility being used perfectly by Black Mamba. They made sure that the Ring of Peace came out, and the Typhoon, and even the Grip from the DK was being used just to make sure that the mobs don't die on top of Brindle, just because Brindle is a mini boss and can't be displaced. There's no way of Typhoon or Ring of Peace, anything like that, displacing her. And she also doesn't move very much at all because she constantly casts those abilities on top of the tank. So very well done by them to make sure that Brindle's not getting healed, and then also making sure that Brindle doesn't heal Goliath. So very well, good job by managing the Sanguine here by Black Mamba. They also, again, are just playing a very different strategy to the Western region by actually dealing with this mob instead of doing this whole skip where you just, run past and have a rogue reset it.
Yeah, I mean, all this percentage that they're accruing that the West would usually skip, they then get to skip something else later. We've seen in the West, typically you kill most of Rawl's Hall, most of Rawl's Room, you kill the kitchen, you kill all of the trash in, well, you kind of have to kill most if not all the trash in Lord and Lady Grace, and then they kill the Gloom Horrors as well. So all of these are things that potentially can be skipped by Black Mamba, except for Lord and Lady Waycrest's Room. Actually, both of these teams, they can do a bit of skipping just because of their higher percentage compared to some of the West teams at this point on trash. But let's check in on the teams right now, as Black Mamba sits at 38% and Soulbound Goliath is 25% right now. They're looking to finish it off, already kiting slowly towards the exit, which I love to see from teams, these little minor adjustments to save seconds, while AAA sits at 78% on Soulbound Goliath and 41% trash.
Yeah, so it seems like the strategies from Black Mamba and AAA are very similar. Both of those teams choose to do very similar strategies. The only difference right now is AAA having slightly higher trash percentage, I believe, from the mobs from the Acolytes in the first Triad room that Black Mamba chose to not do. But other than that, very similar strats. Black Mamba finishing off the boss first because they obviously engaged it earlier. Now they do have 3% less trash, which I don't think is going to make up for the 50% boss difference. So in raw dungeon speed, Black Mamba definitely ahead at this point. They also have 0 deaths compared to 1. So Black Mamba in the lead. They finish off Goliath, and now we're gonna get to the very dangerous Raw area, just because there's so much trash that does AoE damage to the whole group, and on top of that, you just have Sanguine in a very small space.
Yeah, the Christini is quite dangerous in there. However, we do know that the maggots have been changed to not bolster, to not drop Sanguine. So they still apply things like Necrotic, which fortunately we don't have here. But there are some things that the maggots in Rawl's Hall are now void of. Moon has run in, as you can see here, and pulled Rawl in order to reset him so that all of the doors open up in this hallway area. We can see in the hallway, Wong is now running around grabbing everything. This is a very ballsy pull here. He even runs into Rawl's room and grabs a bunch of the trash and heads outside into the courtyard. Bloodlust is popped here. Interesting strategy coming out of them. So sometimes you see a mass pull on top of Rawl with the Bloodlust, but it looks like they're dealing with it in the hall. So there's going to be a ton of damage coming in. They did pull the Void Emissary on the inside, but they're well line of sight of it. His shield wall's already preemptively popped here. A lot of damage from the Unholy DK, but he's taking the brunt of some of the spits. Envies has his work cut out for him right now. Tranquility's down already as they start backpedaling out of all the Sanguine going down on the ground. Well backpedaled here by Wong right now, who does manage to stabilize, and just so much damage. They managed to annihilate most of the trash. And I mean, that was quite masterfully done. Everything's stable, everything's killed. We have a couple of the maggots spawning because there's no way they're getting infests, interrupts when there's an emissary of the tides in there, but they managed to pull it off, and Bloodlust just falls off now.
Yeah, that was a pretty insane pull command, but look at all of those maggots. Look at the spit debuffs on everybody. You can see 3 on Wong and all of the DPS. Everyone has 3 or more spit debuffs. We can only see 3 on the group frame, so there might be even a possibility there's more. So very well healed by enemies. Oh no! There were so many Sanguines on top of each other that he just got one-shot by it.
Oh no, taking a bath in the Sanguini Panini. Why would it even go in there? I don't understand. There are so many other ways around the pools, but
maybe he died on purpose to get out of combat with the Void Emissary because he doesn't have Shadow Melt available, actually.
Possibly. The rogue, I guess, vanished, and yeah, it looks like everybody else committed. So I think that's might have been what it is. So you know what, Nagura? We're the dumb ones. He jumped into the best possible pile of Sanguine he could find in the Eastern Cup here. So he did indeed die on purpose, it seems, because his Shadow Melt had an extra 30 or 40 seconds. I wonder what he used it on, though. Like, why did everybody else out there is available? Nonetheless, it was a purposeful death of his res him up and then get started on the rest of the trash here in the Raw area. As AAA has done a similar pull, but certainly much more modest. They've similarly pulled it out into the courtyard because there's just so much extra space out here.
Yeah, you can see in Black Mamba, they're up to 81% trash because of this huge pull that they just pulled off. Now they also did a pretty significant pull here in the kitchen area, so they have to finish off the Rune Weaver now. The Gorgeous want to make sure that they put the Sanguine in a good spot. But yeah, AAA falling behind just because of this insane pull that Black Mamba managed to pull off. And now they're out of cooldowns except the army on the DK. So, but you know, really not going to be a huge deal unless they pull the Survivalist on top of it, which is something they could do in theory, but they already are on 86% trash, so I don't actually think they need anything else before they go into the basement area.
No, I don't think so either. And then not to mention they have the Gloom Horrors too, which I don't even know if they'll need afterwards, because certainly there's well more than 5 to 6% trash present in Lord and Lady Waycrest area, so they may just skip the Gloom Horrors entirely. But Black Mamba starting here on
they did.
Rawl the Gluttonous at 90%, and yeah, so they pulled a couple of survivalists, so I think they're just going to skip the Gloom Horrors entirely, because you're kind of forced to do the Lord and Lady Waycrest trash, at least most of it, because, well, you need platform space. I mean, Lord of Waycrest literally jumps on top of you in that area, so Rawl here 83%, they're sitting, as Nagura mentioned, 87% trash. Oh, but the Sanguine, I don't know if it's under the boss. That is so close. It doesn't get closer to that with the Sanguine, but they have to be really careful. This last survivalist dies as a bunch of Oozlings come in, start hitting Wong in the back. He is finally positioned well out of the poop on the ground, but does pop his shield wall because things got a bit scary there for a moment. Wants to make sure that the Survivalist is out. Good bump there from Like to make sure that the Ring of Peace gets the mob out before it dies and therefore drops Sanguine on the side. We can see it on the table there. So, well, good heads up play from them there as AAA is at 69% trash and still chewing through most of Rawl's area. They haven't even started Rawl's room itself yet.
They might actually do a pretty huge pull here as they do have their Bloodlust available still. But one thing to note is that they actually don't have a DK in their comp. So they are committing the Bloodlust to this pull. They're not pulling it on top of Rawl though, so I don't think this is gonna catch. Oh, they almost died there just because the Emissary walked on top of the pull, but they did manage to knock it back. But yeah, I don't think this is gonna give them enough time to catch up to Black Mamba, just because they had to do one of those huge pulls where they pulled trash on top of the boss to catch up. But without having the DK, without having this burst AoE damage that Black Mamba has available to them, they just can't do those huge pulls. So AAA pulling off the pull, they have 80% trash at this point as well, so they're catching up in the percentage, but Black Mamba already on 37% on Raw, and on a tyrannical environment, that actually means quite a lot.
Problem is there's some poor positioning here from AAA. Lai is sitting in the back right now, and those Gorgers leap to one of the furthest targets. So they're constantly leaping to him and running back through the Sanguine. Not only do the Gorgers have a high amount of HP, but then they're giving healing on top of it. So you can see everything else has been annihilated except for those 3 Gorgers, which they only now kill. So a bit of time lost, unfortunately, from them with some poor positioning on the healer's part. And they're actually really lucky that they didn't die at the start, Nagura, because 2 of those dinner bells went off, including on the healer that silenced you for 4 seconds. So luckily for them, Lust was already running in that high mitigation CDs up. But Raw has finally been pulled here for AAA. Raw now down to 95% as Black Mamba about to kill their boss here, going balls to the Raw.
Yeah, so Black Mamba, they're on 88%. We mentioned before that this is too much than they actually need. So in the basement area, if you pull all the trash before the next boss, which you have to, you can't really avoid the trash there because that's the only area where you can fight the boss in, then they will probably just not do the Gorgers. Now the Gorgers are pretty dangerous. It's something we've seen other teams in the past skip as well. But with those affixes, it's not really any big problem, I feel like they could do the Gorgers without any super big trouble because Sanguine, if you have a Ring of Peace, a DK with a grip, and a Typhoon and a Vortex coming in, I think is not the biggest problem. But I mean, the pull that they did worked out. They accidentally pulled one of those sisters, unfortunately. So hopefully Envy's does get the Shadow Melt off to rest them back up, though.
Well, no, I mean, they pulled them on purpose because they didn't stealth when they went through, but it actually snapped to them on the stairs when they were running in, so it killed 3 of them. Fortunately, Envy's did indeed manage to get away. In fact, Envy's never even got in combat. He didn't need to use his Shadow Meld on top of it. Now for the Gorgers, you were talking about I think you meant the Gloom Horrors at the end.
Oh, the Gloom Horrors, yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
I was like, oh no, they're going back upstairs for Gorgers. What kind of weird strategy is this? But Black Mamba, indeed, here in Lord and Lady Waycrest room. I don't think they're going to want to touch the Void Emissary in the corner, and it looks like they won't. They have 12% on the board. They do pull Lord Waycrest. Now, they don't exactly have a lot of space here. There's a Void Emissary on the side. It already cuts about half of the play space out. The Soul Charmers and varying different mobs' health, like the Soul Ancestors, drop Sanguine. As we can see right now, the Soul Charmer gets healed to almost full by sitting in it. Warding Candles have gone down as well. They have to be very careful where they put the rest of the Sanguine. And Wong has to be very careful where he's kiting right now because he's not too far from the Void Emissary in the top left of the screen, just off screen there, as AAA is now at Raw 10%, and they're going to be following suit. They were at 86% trash, so not far behind. Black Mamba engaged this area at 88% trash.
You can see Envy's doing so much HPS. He tries to keep everyone alive. Monk almost going down there, but he did manage to recover. You just look at the HPS, but out of Envy's, the Soul Charmer is still alive. They want to be very careful with the Soul Charmer because he can't be a Ring of Peace or gripped or anything like that, so they want to make sure that they move Waycrest, Lord Waycrest out of it.
Yeah, the reason I was kind of tapping your screen there for the Soul Charm is that it was glowing blue. They actually missed one of the Soul Fetish interrupts, so that's why like dropped so low. Everybody dropped so low because that AoE bolt volley went off and it was doing 50% more damage. It was trucking Wong in the meantime, so they did manage to kill it off and drop the Sanguine well on the side. Now the original Sanguine pulls from, there we go, the original Sanguine pulls from the Soul Essences should be despawning some minutes, so they finally do despawn as Lord Waycrest enters his final cycle before Lady Waycrest joins him. Once he gets to 30%, she will channel and join the fight as well, dropping herself to 10% HP in order to siphon it back into the boss. The mechanic, of course, we all know and love is AAA gets started here on 86% trash. Exact same pull, but they did not engage the boss, so they're playing it a bit safer. And the 93% that they have, actually 91% that AAA is going to have, is basically the perfect amount that you need for those Gloom Horrors. So I guess they will be dealing with those.
Yeah, so they actually do the Gloom Horrors after all, which really makes sense because, again, they're not too dangerous to deal with those affixes. So 93% is going to be just fine. They also have 3 Wraths still available to them, so they I mean, don't want to cast a curse, and we have done a lot of things go wrong on the last boss in Shrine of the Storm. We haven't seen that many teams wipe yet to the last boss in Waycrest manner, but you know, Black Mamba and AAA, they showed us wrong in Shrine, so maybe it's gonna happen again. But now we have Lady Waycrest actually join Lord Waycrest on Black Mamba's side here, so they only have to finish off both of them one more time, as AAA is still in the first phase where Lady Waycrest has to heals lured Waycrest, I believe, 3 more times.
Yeah, so efficient cleave strategy here from Black Mamba right now. And Figure, don't tempt me with the good time of an absolute fiesta on the last boss. I'm already foaming at the mouth just thinking about it. But about to finish off the 4th boss here, the 4th tyrannical boss, might I add, of the Waycrest dungeon. Now, as I mentioned earlier before the cast viewers joining, Waycrest, once again, being the only dungeon that has 5 bosses in BFA, Battle for Azeroth. The other 9 dungeons have 4 bosses each, so it's particularly grueling in a tyrannical setting, this dungeon. You just have a lot of, I mean, you have an extra boss, you have a lot of extra health to chew through and mechanics to deal with. As the Gloom Horrors are pulled up right now, looks like they're doing a more typical strategy where I would assume that Envy's jumps up to a ledge where he actually cannot get jumped on right now. I don't know where he went off screen right now. Maybe we can get a better view from our observers, because there are a few dead spots, or no jump spots, if you will, that prevent the Gloom Horrors from jumping, while Wong and the rest of the melee just deal with them and cleave them down. It looks like they're not jumping away, so he's definitely up somewhere.
Yeah, that definitely helps for Sanguine specifically, just because if they jump around and then drop the Sanguine pool somewhere in between the tank and the healer or the range target they're jumping to, then it's so much more difficult to handle. So good on them that they're using that latch. You can see him actually at the top right corner here. He's on top of this stone where he was standing during the boss fight as well, and therefore the Gloom Horrors are not jumping, and you can see Wong just making sure that the Sanguine pools don't drop in a bad spot. Now they are on 100% trash. They also have the Bloodlust available, so it's only them and the last boss.
That is everything that stands in their way from 2-0ing this series right now, and definitely a much cleaner run coming out of Black Mamba that we like to see from them. More akin to their later matches in the previous Cup 2 weeks ago that they played. But then again, they had a pretty clean run in Shrine of the Storm up until the last boss as well. Yeah. I would say that Volzit, the final boss of Shrine of the Storm, is definitely a much more dangerous and potentially wiping boss than something like Gorak 2.
I mean, in what way could you possibly wipe on this boss? Let's think about this.
I mean, AFK bio.
I mean, you could just not interrupt the ads when they cast the Death Lance, which will stun you if it doesn't go interrupted. But I mean, they have Typhoon, they have stun, they have grip, they have many things. So
yeah, they have enough to rotate. I mean, you need a one of those mob spawns every 15 seconds, so you need a frequent interrupt. Now, you have a Death Grip on an Unholy DK, I think is 25 seconds, and then between that and Typhoon, you're actually set. Typhoon's 30 seconds, you have 25 seconds on Grip, so you have something to handle every single mob. Not to mention the Rogue can support. You have an ROP bump from the Monk as well. I believe Paralysis works now too. It didn't used to. They actually changed that in 8.15, I think. Most CC did not used to work on the Slavers, but now it does. Gorak Tool now 35% and rapidly going down in health as AAA has started, but too little too late here. They do have an extra 10 seconds on the clock in order to beat them because there are 2 deaths versus Black Mamba's 4, but they don't have access to Bloodlust, and they're 60% behind on a tyrannical boss.
Yeah, so the 2 deaths are not going to be enough. 10 seconds difference between those 2, but shout out to AAA. They actually played this Waycrest very clean for their strategy, right? I mean, in the end, the strategy was just slower, and they did do a little bit of smaller pulls. I think the big breaking point between those 2 strategies was just this insane pull that Black Mamba did in the RAL area where they committed their Bloodlust to. That was the one thing that saved them the most amount of time. But outside of that, AAA not actually playing that bad either with those 2 deaths only.
No, certainly very impressive here. Black Mamba sweeping the series 2-0 right now, and much better performance, Jack, than their first game, or at least the end of their first game.
Yeah, they've definitely started to show they're stepping it up, and they're just putting together some more creative pulls, more aggressive pulls as well, and not failing right at the end and maintaining that composure. So you're starting to see this team develop quite a bit here, Tettles.
Yeah, being able to clutch it out, definitely something we need to see from Black Mamba moving forward. In their first series, they had some major inconsistencies and some major question marks, but that Waycrest manor and 80% of that Shrine of the Storm looked very good. It looked like AAA and Black Mamba towards the beginning of the game were pretty much neck and neck, and even through the middle part with like this big pull that Black Mamba does, Black Mamba and AAA are still neck and neck once they end up killing the second boss here in Soulbound Goliath. This pull from Black Mamba is very technical, and it can actually be very dangerous for all of your DPS, if they get cleaved, if they end up getting channeled on by the Runeweaver or anything else like that, it can actually be very dangerous. But both teams end up executing it really well. Black Mamba does end up pulling ahead with just a little bit, just because of how they end up dealing with the corridor areas with Rawl's room and all of that trash there. And then they also end up pulling Lord and Lady Waycrest with all of this trash here. Again, a bunch of very technically very challenging pulls that Black Mamba executes very well and ends up taking the series because of it.
Yeah, it goes to start showing how this team that has been revamped, they switched out all of their DPSers now, has begun to start stepping it up, finding a little bit more of their groove.
So they have the strategies and they have the knowledge and they know what they want to be looking to do. They've seen like all the other teams and they've seen a lot of other, and I'm sure they've put a lot of time in practicing, but at the end of the day, it is very challenging to do some of the pulls they're doing. So you need to, the more amount of practice time that you are able to put into it, the more results that you actually are going to be gaining. And it seems like Black Mamba just has like a synergy issue, and potentially they don't end up putting enough time, or they don't have enough time to be able to practice some of the more technically demanding pulls that they're doing.
We'll have to see how they start stepping it up as they go into that upper finals to square off against Buff War Nerf Rogue tomorrow, which brings us to our last series of the day between Big Money Crab and Pixel. Now we haven't seen either of the, we haven't seen Big Money Crab just yet because, again, they had to forfeit their first round, so that they did give the bye to their opponents on that one. That's right, that's what the Crab does, Tettles. We caught you. The camera moved a little bit too quickly. But Big Money Crab, when we see them previously in Season 1, they had a couple good dungeons, but it was always very clear as to these are the dungeons they practiced and were ready for, and these are the ones that they anticipated they'd drop down into like the lower.
Cup one, I think you mentioned, but you meant, but
Season 1.
Season 1?
When we saw Big Money Crab.
Like earlier this year, yeah.
Yes.
And if I'm not mistaken, they were the ones that kind of experimented with Shadow Priest and Hunter.
There's a Hunter, yeah.
All right, you need to calm down with your big pop of love here, okay?
Fortunately, I'm not casting again.
That's probably for the best, really. But
I would not be biased. I don't know what you're talking about.
but, so it's nice to see a team kind of trying to open up, and if any time, certainly not Season 1, but if any time to do this kind of development with different classes and different specs that we've been seeing from not only the West Cup last weekend, but even the East Cup started doing it a bit because they were post Outlaw Rogue nerf 2 weeks ago. So it's nice to see it now. So they might be in their element, Big Money Crab, in their element of trying new classes, especially as a team as daring to bring a Disc Priest to the fold. So it should be. I think we're going to see some interesting comps at least coming up.
I'm ready for some interesting comps. I don't know about you.